Percent error. In chapter 6, we can see as we scroll on down, not in our textbook usually, but down here you can see it is one of our vocab that we need to work on. It's also one of the skills we need to be able to do. Thus, we are going to go and learn about percent error. When we talk about percent error as defined, it's the error given as a percent in data. And here is your formula here in a sense, but this is a lot to write on in every time, so we're going to shorten that. But to find your percent error, you're going to take your value that you guessed at, minus the actual value, and that's always going to be positive, thus the absolute value lines here. So always make sure whatever your error is, it's an absolute value. Absolute value is always, always, always positive. And then you're going to divide that by your actual value. But for us, again, that's a lot to write on in. So we're just going to write down percent error, which I will say strange because, again, to find percent error, when we're looking to find percent error, your amount of error will go on top over the actual amount. And this is what is needed on every problem, every time. Reason number 1, because I told you so. But more importantly, reason number 2, it's worth a point. It's a formula. Reason number 3, it's going to help you remember how to do percent error. Reason number 4, it's going to help you get the right answer. So today, when we try to find percent error, we're going to put the error on top and then divide by the actual. So again, use the question to help you out, because it's in front of you. When you read it through, you thought you'd get a 90% on the last test, but you got a 60%. What is your percent error? Please circle it on up. Since it's in front of you, it's cueing you. It's helping you to remember to find your percent error. So because of that, you and I are going to write down our formula. Percent error. No, don't put percent %E. I like the abbreviation, but we need to write it on out so we remember, just like with percent change in the previous lesson. But today, since we're talking about percent error, when we want that error, the error is going to go on top, and we're going to divide it by the actual amount. Please note, when you're talking about the error, I understand, just like in the previous lesson, you can do mental math. But here in your notes, please show me the work so that way you can remember as you go back and look. What was your error? You thought you'd get a 90% on the test, but you got a 60% instead. So what was your error? How much were you wrong by? Again, mental math, calculator approved, but somewhere go ahead and show me that in the notes we took 90 minus 60. We did that because that was how much you were wrong. That was your error. So that's going to go on top. And then just like before, which one was it actually? Did you actually get 90%? Or did you actually get 60%? Since we got 60%, that's the actual amount. Put that on the bottom. Please note, again, when you divide that, a 30 out of 60 on an assignment is not a 0%. It's also not a 5%. Please remember we had to move the decimal 2 times. Bump, bump. I invite you to move the decimal with the little loops. You don't need to, but I invite you to so that way you can remember that you have the final answer of 50%. But let's add in one word today since it's a percent error. They ask, what was your percent error? Well, it's a 50% error. Again, on every problem, I need to see this. If you want to show the work of finding the error on the side, great. If you want to write down the decimal, I recommend that and move it, but I don't need it. I just need what's here inside. I need the formula, I need the work, I need an answer, a percent sign, and then just add on that word error. So that way from our previous lesson, remember that with percent change, there were 2 labels. Percent error, we'll just say it's a 50% error. Next one, Mr. Walls thought all 24 students were in class yesterday, but he found out only 20 were. Oops. Attendance secretaries would be a little disappointed in me there. I made a phone call in class. I am sorry. But here again, notice it says, find your percent error, or in this case, find Mr. Walls' percent error? I invite you to circle it up. You don't have to, but that's using the problem to help cue you, to give you a clue on what to do. Since it says, what is the percent error? What you do have to do, you got to write down percent error. Again, percent error. As we go on and review, when you say, Mr. Walls, how do we find percent error? I'm going to say, percent error, to remind you that when you're looking for percent error, then your error is going to go on top, and then we need to remember actual. No, do not put E, do not put A. I like your thinking. We've tried it before with abbreviations, but overall, vast majority, most everybody does not remember at the end what the E and the A stand for, so I need you to write it out. But again, what was the error? I see the two numbers. What was the error between them? Again, you're welcome to write it on in if you want to. You don't have to on your assignment. But here in your notes, please write it in. So today when you go back and look, or tomorrow, or when you go to study for our assessment, whenever it is, you can see where this 4 magically came from. Now here again, be careful. Which one was the actual? We need the actual. Everyone say actual. I don't know if you said it, but I hope you did because I'm not there. But actual, again, was that 24? No, I thought there were 24. I was wrong. I found out there were only 20. I found out there were actually 20 students. So that's why the 20 needs to go down here. A 4 out of 20 on your homework, 4 out of 20 on an assignment is not a 0%. When you divide that on out, it's not a 0 and 0.2. It's not 2/10. You need to change that to a decimal. Again, remember, we spent time on IXL, so that way we remember that this is a 20%, and I'm going to say 20% error. This is your answer, but we need all of this on every problem. It needs to be there. I'll be looking for it on a worksheet and giving you a point for it. If you're missing the formula, you're going to see an F-1. If you don't have the 4 out of 20 or whatever your numbers are, you're going to see a W-1. If you don't have the percent sign, you're going to see an L-1. Be very careful. So on a worksheet or a normal old-fashioned quiz, point for the actual answer of 20, point for trying, most likely a 5-point problem here. So if you just put down 20, it's a -3. Why are we doing this again? Because as you scroll down, when we're using multi-step math problems, we also are looking here. We're finding the percent of error. One of the skills we have to be able to do for 7RP3, where we're applying proportional relationships to solve percent problems and multi-step ratio problems. Multi-step math problems, kind of the same thing right there. So, though we're probably ready to go, going to still do extra practice so that way we can see it. Whenever it says find the percent error, you don't have to circle it up in your notes, but what you do have to do is put down that formula. How do we find percent error, Mr. Walls? So glad you asked. To find percent error, put the error on top in the numerator, put the actual on the bottom. You need to write out the formula. Some of you can already see it and you're grabbing your calculator, and I know we want to do that. Please feel free to, but I need to see the work. So when you have this 12, make sure you write that in on your assignment, just like you're writing it in now on your notes, and the actual amount. But again, I invite you, where'd the 12 come from? I expected to get 48, but I only got 36. So that's not very good if I am trying to make cookies for my business, Crumble Cookie, or whatever have you, just bake sale, or just as a side gig. If I'm supposed to get 48 cookies and I only got 36, I have a percent error there. So when we divide that on out, again, make sure you're careful to have the actual there underneath the bottom, what I actually got. Now this one is 0.333333333333333 forever and ever repeating. Please note, whenever it's not a terminating, whenever it's not a decimal that ends, write down 5 numbers after the decimal. I know you can put down 0.3 with the line over the top using bar notation, but please do this because then when you round it, or rather make it a percent first, now you can round. Please note, if it says like IXL usually does, round to the nearest whole number, that's here. Is it 33% or is it 34%? Then we've got to the nearest tenth. So that's here. Nearest tenth is the first decimal place. Nearest hundredth would be 2 decimal places, 0.33 or 0.34. This is thousandths. Listen to instructions. Please note, if it doesn't tell you what to do, Mr. Walls says 2. So that's where we're going to look here at the second decimal place to the hundredths. Look back 1. Is the number immediately after it 5 or higher? Nope. So if it doesn't tell you what to do, Mr. Walls says 2. So 33.33% error. Here's your answer. But just like in your notes, just like on the assignment, all of this needs to be here. It needs to be there. You need to be able to retain how to find percent error. You need to remember that as it's one of our skills. Last one, once again, there we can see it in the question at the very end, percent error. You thought you'd get 40 votes at the talent show, but you got 120 votes. What's your percent error? And again, in real life, you're probably not going to care. You'll be stoked you got 80 more votes than you thought you were. But some things in life roll off percent error, whether we're talking about voting and things like that, where they have a plus or minus 3% on their polls. Sometimes in in class, I would share very quickly about my AP chemistry class in high school, how all my labs were graded on percent error. And if we had anything above a 5% error, we got a flat 0, an F on it, and we had to come back in and redo it. But for here, let's just move on. Percent error. To find percent error, no, you cannot write it once. No, you cannot say, well, it's on the other slide. You cannot say, I wrote it on the top of my paper. Every problem, every time you're writing out the formula, where percent error is the amount of error on top over the actual. From there, again, do you want to write out how much your error was, how much you were off by? Great. If not, that's fine. Careful. Which one? 40 or 120? Which one did I actually get? What did you got, if that's a helpful term? So since you got 120, that's the actual. Thus, I'm going to put that down here because it's what I actually got. When you grab a calculator and divide that on out, that's where you're going to get another repeating decimal. That happens sometimes, whether in life or with problems. So though it's 0.6666666666666 with a 7 at the end, ignore the 7 because the 6 is repeating. You could put that line over the top for bar notation, but don't. Just write down 5 numbers after the decimal. Even if it's not a nice decimal like 0.6666666 or 0.3333, if it's something like 0.180543672777654, just write down 5 numbers, change it to a percent. We always move the decimal twice, and then round where they tell you. Did they tell you to round to the nearest whole? Then round to the 66 or 67%. Tenth is the first decimal place. Hundredths, thousandths. Again, if they don't tell you what to do, Mr. Walls says 2. Round to the nearest hundredth. So here, we're going to have 66.66 or 0.67. From the number that you're rounding to, immediately after that, look back 1 number. So it's going to be 66 and 67 hundredths, 66.67% error. Please remember, we have to be able to do this. This is one of our skills way down here. Many things that we have to be able to do for 7RP3, and one of them is to find percent error, just like a previous lesson, very similar. We found percent increase and decrease. So today we're going to work just that. On whatever type of data they give us, we're going to find the percent error, and every time you're going to write out that formula. percent error, where it's the error on top divided by the actual.